What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Burrow. My name is Jacob Kelly, joined by JJ Metz. Kevin is not joining us today, just the two of us for a podcast. It's the first time all year long where we have both basketball and football to talk about for this week as the basketball team gets underway with Loyola Chicago later today, and the football team obviously playing East Carolina on Saturday. JJ, welcome. How are you doing, sir?
Man, I'm doing so good. I'm so excited. I have this saying there are three things I love in this life: playing golf, spending time with family, and FAU basketball. And the fact that FAU basketball starts today, I am just beyond ecstatic. I have literally been counting down the days every single day. I have a whiteboard. I erase it. I write one day less and 0 more days. Tonight, FAU plays basketball, man. I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless and so excited.
It's an exciting day. FAU's definitely turned into a basketball school, something that I never would have expected when I first joined FAU, that basketball would be the main focus of the school. When I joined, we had Lane Kiffin coaching the football team. The basketball team was all right. They were just dwelling there in Conference USA, but now a top 10 team getting their season started today. But first, we are going to talk about the football team. In last week, not a great performance, 45-42 against UAB Blazers. The offense was really sharp, really hot. 293 yards, 3 touchdowns from Daniel Richardson. LaJohntay Wester, I mean, we just can't use enough words to describe how good he's playing this season. He's now 4th in college football in yards and is still 1st in catches. 11 catches, 219 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's just incredible performance. But FAU did just fall short. And briefly before we get to talking about East Carolina, JJ, what were your thoughts following that loss against the Blazers?
Terrible defensive performance. I mean, you can't give up that amount of points, over 40 points to UAB. And the offense looked really good, but the defense just wasn't clicking on any cylinders. 45-42 game. And I mean, you can't give up 45 points to UAB. Now, what I do take away from this game is this team is has determination and grit to come back, as it was a 35-14 ball game. But the Owls came back and won up 42-35. But I mean, looking at UAB in total, you just can't do that. You Terrible secondary. UAB's quarterback Jacob Zeno threw for 484 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that is very good for UAB. Hats off to them. But we had a terrible defensive performance.
Yeah, that's something that you can't see this week against a team that last week, against the best team in the conference, against Tulane, only had 10 points. They held them to only 10, or said they only held them to 13. So a very close game for one of the best teams in the country in general, a ranked opponent, the only ranked AAC team in Tulane, a 13-10 performance. So clearly a team that is a lot better on the defensive side of the ball than the offensive side of the ball. Allowing 614 yards and 45 points to UAB it was just unacceptable. Jacob Zeno, like you just mentioned, JJ, had his best game as a Blazer. 5 touchdowns, 484, had 1 interception. But their fourth quarter performance to be able to come, they're down by 10 points, had a long 70-yard touchdown, and then able to kick a field goal in the last seconds of the game to win it for the Blazers, which all but guarantees that FAU is not going to be in the conference championship game. So now we are just hunting to get into a bowl game. And that starts this week with East Carolina. And like I just mentioned, a team that last week, even though they are the worst team in the conference, they have not won a single conference game, held Tulane to only 13 points. And it was very close there for a few moments. So, JJ, what do you know about this East Carolina Pirates squad?
Yeah, so they weren't able to win many games this season, but they have played some really close games against some good teams. I mean, Michigan was probably their best game they played against. They lost 30-6, but that's pretty impressive for a 1-8 team in the G5 to beat the number 2 overall team in the country at that point. They played close against Tulane last week, so they definitely can pose problems for this FAU team. But their quarterback, Mason Garcia, who had high expectations going into this year, got benched for Alex Finn, their quarterback now. Alex Finn has looked really bad. He has a QBR of 21. He has 7 INTs to 4 touchdowns. So obviously, you gotta make sure you play really good defense against East Carolina. You have to watch some film from last week and improve this week on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, this is the offense that is much worse than the UAB offense. Like you just mentioned, they did go to their backup quarterback, Alex Flynn, and he has been better than Mason Garcia, but it's not by a lot. You look at Mason Garcia's numbers: 408 yards in his brief stint with the team, only 50% completion percentage, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Alex Flynn, since he's taken over as a starter, 1,063 yards, only 51.5% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. A slightly better touchdown interception ratio, but you're still throwing more interceptions than you're throwing touchdowns. A slightly better passer rating, 94.9 for Flynn, 85.9 for Garcia. They've only scored a total of 15 total offensive touchdowns this year. Most of that coming from the ground game with Rajal Harris with his 4 touchdowns, but only 324 yards on the season. This is a very stagnant offense. The receiving game, they have 2 leading receivers, 2 bigger receivers, taller but still slender body, with Jalen Johnson 381 yards and Chase Sowell 380 yards, both a touchdown apiece, only separated by 1 yard. Chase Sowell was one of the casualties of the Colorado team that just we saw Deion Sanders bring in a completely new squad virtually. He only had two catches last year in Colorado's 1-win season. He's come in over here with East Carolina and obviously had a lot more success with 31 catches, 380 yards. But this offense is putrid. You're not going to get a lot of points on the board from this East Carolina team, especially on the road. But you do have to look at how well they play Tulane. Tulane, a team that's been scoring points with ease, that, except for their one hiccup, has been rolling through the AAC so far this season. And they gave them a real tough run, only 3-point difference between the two teams. So with that performance, how they played last week against Tulane, JJ, are you more concerned going into this game, even though they haven't won a single game so far in the conference this season?
Not at all. I mean, I don't think any differently of ECU than I would before the Tulane game, because we know they can play teams close, and we knew that going into the Tulane game. So I think the same of this East Carolina team. They're just bad. Like, no disrespect, but they're not a good football team. They're the worst football team in the American Athletic Conference. And I just think that they're not going to win a single game left on the season this year.
It's very possible that they could finish winless in the conference. You look at the remainder of their schedule. They have Navy, who's 2-3 in conference. Tulsa, who's at the bottom with them with 1-4 in conference. So if they're going to win a conference game, it is most likely to be that last game against Tulsa. But this is a team that isn't fighting for anything this season, except for maybe coaches to keep their jobs at the end of the season. You've already clearly you're not going to make the conference championship game, and they're already eliminated from the possibility of making a bowl game. But like JJ alluded to, they do play teams pretty tough. We look at their game against Rice earlier this season, 24-17, Charlotte 10-7, and then Tulane 13-10. While they're not winning these games, which obviously is the most important part of the game, they are keeping it close, and it could just take a few breaks going their way as opposed to their opponent's way. And that's the difference of a game. That's the difference between them upsetting Tulane last week and only losing by 3. And this FAU team, we've seen different times this year that one game the offense is going to play really well, one game the defense is going to play really well. We've had very rare instances where we've seen both. I think really the only time that we've seen both was against USF, where we were really concerned about their offense, their quarterback. They move the ball quickly, they run a lot of plays, they get a lot of yards, and holding USF to only 14 points was, I think, our overall best performance this year before falling to UTSA. Smacked around Charlotte. That game was a blowout, but it kind of still held in the balance late into the game. And then, obviously, last week against UAB. If we are to win this game, we are that much closer to clinching a bowl game, but then we're going to have to go through Tulane and Rice. Is there any concern on your end, JJ, that we aren't going to make a bowl game?
There's a lot of concern. I think you can mark up that going 1-1 in the next 2 games is very realistic. to probably beat the worst team in the AC is realistic, and to lose to the best team is realistic. So I think we go 1-1 through the next two games, honestly. And then it all comes down to Rice. Rice is very similar to us. JT Daniels, their star quarterback. He's going to be tough. But there's a lot of concern. I mean, honestly, right now, I don't think we make a bowl game. And I think on anything under 7 wins is a disappointment of a season for FAU. So, I mean, I think 7 was probably our floor going into the season. So, I'm just pretty disappointed so far.
I don't know if I'd say 7 was our floor. I'd say the over under on wins that we'd have would be like around 6.5, 7.5 if you were placing a betting line on it. So
Vegas, Vegas had us at 8. So,
yeah, it's been a weird season. It's been a really weird season. If you would have said that, I don't know if that line would have been as high if you would have said that Daniel Richardson was the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season due to a quarterback injury in the beginning of the year with Casey Thompson. So that obviously changed things up a little bit.
yeah, but I don't think Casey is that much better than Daniel. Daniel's been so good. And he's utilized Jonte Wester. I mean, Casey's probably a little better, but Daniel has looked good. And the offense has looked really good overall with Daniel.
He has, don't get me wrong, but I think also something with Casey is how late he got with the team. Whereas you saw with Daniel was there since earlier on in the spring and was able to practice all spring and all summer. It did take a little longer for Casey to join the team, but that's part of football. That's part of stuff you got to deal with. Daniel Richardson has come in and looked good, and he's, to his credit, he's gotten better each and every game. He's at a little over 1,500 yards in the season, 63% completion percentage. That was something that when he first started, starting, I guess is the way to say that, the completion percentage was not there. He wasn't able to find anybody except for LeJohntay Wester, and there's been games we've seen him hit other guys, but it's still pretty much been entirely LeJohntay Wester's show with his 1,000 yards, and the next leading receiver, Tony Johnson, with 282 yards. 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's got on the positive side, the touchdown-interception ratio. Has been sacked 15 total times. But this offense has started to find its rhythm. Now the defense is getting held back by injuries. But this is an opportunity for the defense to get back on track against a pretty putrid offense with ECU. So, with that all being said, we're put to the point of the episode where we look to the man to my right and ask him, JJ, how is this game going to go?
I have lost all hope in FAU after last week,
I feel like you've said it like 3 separate times so far this season.
but like I actually have. And that can't be regained this season. Just disappointed overall. I think we're going to win this game in a sluggish 20-14 game at home. LeJohntay is going to do LeJohntay things again. He'll have 2 touchdowns, and I hope we can win this game. I mean, if we lose this game, then we can all mark up this season is disappointing. I mean, this is a must win. But remember, we are in the running for a bowl game and to still have a winning season. FAU hasn't had a winning football season since 2019, which is 4 years now. So, yeah.
And we've seen a lot of end of the season runs where we thought we had it clearly in the bag to finish with a bowl game and then drop the final 2 games. Did you go ahead?
And as you mentioned, I mean, with Taggart 2 years ago, we were 5-3, didn't make a bowl game.
Yeah.
Last year we were 5-5, didn't make a bowl game. I mean, we couldn't get to that 6th win, and all that is still on the table. We just have 2 out of the 3 games we have to win, and it's not like it's impossible. I mean, Rice and ECU are very winnable games.
They are. Did you give a score prediction in there?
20-14 FAU.
2014 FAU. Okay, I guess I'll put on the hat. I think this is not going to be a blowout, but let's see. I don't even have up what the line is on the game, but I do think without even seeing. So 7.5. 7.5. 7.5. I think FAU is going to cover that. I think I'd go FAU 24, ECU 10. Kind of like JJ said, a little bit of an uglier game, as you know it's kind of a demoralizing defeat last week for FAU. You now know that it's pretty much a lock that you're not making the conference championship game. Mathematically, I'm not even sure if it is possible, but it's more than likely not. You got Tulane, SMU, and UTSA who are all undefeated in conference. I haven't looked at their schedule, so I don't know if it's possible for them to all drop 2 games and somehow magically we end up at the
It is.
top or in the top 2.
Yes, it is.
It is possible. So there is
Yeah.
still that, but all likelihood that's not happening. So I don't think that you're going to see the sharpest game out of FAU. I think you're going to see a better performance on defense, but I can see this being a game where the offense starts to unravel a little bit. Maybe some early success, and then when we get into the second half, like we saw earlier this season, the defense or the offense kind of falls apart.
If FAU wins out, they're 7-5. ESPN gives us a 12% chance to make the conference championship if we win out.
Yeah, which is not great, but it's still possible. I don't know if I already said this, but I'm going to go with 24-10 with the Owls winning. So with that, we can move to something that I know JJ is very excited to talk about and gives JJ a lot more hope, and that is today's game as FAU is already up in Chicago. We were waiting on the news about Elijah Martin, whether he's going to be good to go with his foot injury. But taking on a loyal Chicago team that has a lot of experience on the team. They're retaining 4 out of their top 5 scorers from last season, as well as bringing a couple graduate transfers in. So JJ, it's here. It's finally here. You've talked a lot about how there's championship or bust expectations with this FAU basketball team that starts tonight with a loyal Chicago. How confident are you with or without Elijah Martin going tonight that FAU is going to be able to get it done against Loyola Chicago?
See, Elijah Martin is a crucial player. I mean, he can drive. When you give him the ball at the top of the key, he's probably like the best driver on this team. He can drive inside, make a layup on the perimeter, and get inside. I mean, he's really, really electric. I mean, his athleticism is undeniable. He can dunk on anyone. And he's a crucial player. Now, if Elijah plays or doesn't play, no matter what, I'm not going to spoil what I think for this game, but we should win. He shouldn't be that much of a difference, Elijah. I mean, he's definitely, if he plays, it's going to help, but I want to see him play. It looks like he's going to play. John Rothstein said that he'll probably play, and I think he'll play, but he's still game time decision, so I'm confident either way. But if he doesn't play, it's next man up, and our backup guards will have Gaffney, Witherspoon to come in, and maybe we'll see a Carroll at small forward.
Yeah, it's unlike I was just talking about Loyal Chicago. It is a very similar returning group of guys for FAU. Now we obviously have some freshmen that we brought in that are first years with the team, but we know who's going to be out there on the floor if not Elijah Martin. You know that FAU is going to run primarily. Now we have seen that they're looking to go with try to integrate a 3-guard 2-forward lineup instead of the 4-guard 1-forward lineup that we saw last year. That'd be pretty easy to do this game here with Loyal Chicago. Maybe something that'd be nice to experiment with if you're without Elijah Martin, or even if he isn't at 100% go, to see what the dynamic is like in a real game with 3 guards on the floor. Obviously, you could have Jalen Gaffney out there. You play Greenlee, Nick Boyd, Janelle Davis. There's a rotation of guys you could have as your 3-man guards, and then see Rosado and Vlad Golden out there on the floor together, which, you know, the last time we got to see the Owls play in a legitimate game last year where we saw the rebounding was such an issue, and maybe would have loved to see that be something they experimented with at that time. Now this season, I think that's something we can expect to see a little bit more, and obviously fingers crossed tonight that Elijah Martin is good to go. Are you, JJ, we always see now with teams with the transfer portal, it's more prevalent in football, but still something that goes on with the basketball world. Are you a little concerned that FAU hasn't tried to bring in any experience from some of these other Division I teams to try to bolster this lineup instead of just going with the pretty much same roster from last year like we're doing?
Yeah, so You're only allowed to have 14 scholarships on a college basketball team, and since FAU is returning pretty much everyone besides Forrest and got 2 freshmen, then you can't really get anyone from the portal. But I really would have liked them to see them go after Tyler Perry, who is a transfer, averaged 19 points a game, shot 42% from three from North Texas. He had interest in FAU. I really wish FAU wanted to go after him, but Coach May is all about development and unselfishness and going after someone to bring him in that could mess up the chemistry of this FAU team because they're all brothers and they're all together and they love each other so much and they all know each other's games, so that he didn't want to mess up the chemistry between all our players. So I'm actually glad that we didn't go after anyone because it's not going to mess this team up. But if there's someone I would have liked FAU to get, it would be Tyler Perry.
Yeah, it would have been nice, and I definitely understand that logic, especially when you saw the success that the team had last year with this squad and with Forrest being the only one who is let go. You feel very confident that you can replicate the same exact team, the same exact performances that we saw last year, since Michael Forrest, of his years with FAU, didn't have his best season. Looking at today with Loyola Chicago, like I mentioned, they're bringing back 4 out of their top 5 scorers, led by Philip Aston last year, averaged 14.6 points per game, was also their leading rebounder with 5.6. So he's going to be the key guy for FAU to focus on today in the game. But this is a team that last year only scored 67 points per game compared to FAU with their 79 points per game. So they do struggle to get buckets, whereas FAU, again, whether anybody in that guard rotation, you feel pretty confident with the ball in their hands, as well as getting it down low to your bigs. We know Giancarlo Rosado has expanded his game a little bit this year, and I'm really excited to see those two of him and Vlad work together. And when they're, which is one of them on the floor, who beats them out because beats each other out for the starter when we get closer to tournament time, because you have two centers that do two very different things. We saw last year in the tournament run, we started to get more of Rosado than we did in the regular season. So there's a lot of things that we can see unfold in play with this FAU team for the season. But for just today, it's I think the only ranked game we have going on tonight, as all the other ranked opponents have already had their first games. We saw, what was it, Michigan State, was it, that lost to
James Madison.
Yeah, James Madison. Their football team's 9-0, and their basketball team, I think, went to Michigan State and upset them. So we've already seen some ranked opponents, I believe even a top 10 opponent with Michigan State being knocked off. So is there any worry by you, JJ, that this could be happening today with FAU?
There's a lot of worry. I think the spread is concerning at being -6 for Loyola, and it's in Chicago. And if Elijah doesn't play, I do have concern in this game. But we got to come back to reality. And this Loyola Chicago team went 10-21 last season. So I think there's some concern, but it's not that much of an extent. I mean, ESPN gives us a 44% chance of winning if you look at the game odds, which I just don't understand. So there's got to be something that
I think it's actually the other way around, JJ. I'm looking at it right now, and FAU is 58% favorites, and that we are 6.5-point favorites as well.
I meant that Loyola Chicago has a 42% chance of winning. No, we have 42%.
Right.
And 6-point favorites I saw this morning.
Yeah, I think it's a game that it's a good test. You're playing a team that now they don't have the experience that they saw when they made their own Final Four run years ago. But two Cinderellas, and whether you want to call FAU a Cinderella or not, last year amongst FAU fans we weren't really, but amongst the general public we were a Cinderella team making it to the Final Four, and Loyola Chicago definitely was when they went on their run. So it's nice seeing two teams that have made history come to the forefront today and play each other. What do you have as your score prediction for the game today, JJ?
I could see this game going one of two ways. I mean, I put on my video that it would be like an 11-point win for FAU, but it's either going to be like a 10-point game or a complete blowout, and I've been really going back and forth on it, but I'm going to take FAU in a blowout. Give me 85-47 FAU. Loyola Chicago doesn't even come close to the standard of FAU. I mean, they went 10-21. You do have to out for Preston Alston as he averaged, 16 points and 6 rebounds a game, which is really good. But we're going to destroy Loyola Chicago. We're the best team in the country. Championship or bust. And we're going to be a top 5 team in the country after this week. And the whole world is going to be watching as it's the only ranked matchup. Give me John L. Davis to have 25 points in this ball game. He's going to go off. He's going to make some great threes. And, I mean, we're going to be up by 30 at the end of the first half. We won't really care about the second half. I mean, I'm just going to watch beauty on my TV. It's going to be awesome, man. Championship or bust. Let's run it back.
Where is the? Do you know where the game is being shown at? Because on the ESPN app, I don't see anything.
So you have to get the Barstool Sports app, and then you have to AirPlay the Barstool Sports app on your TV. So you can get the app on your TV. Many TVs don't do apps. Mine, I'm fortunate enough they do, so I downloaded it on my TV. But also, you can AirPlay it on the Barstool Sports app on your television. So make sure you do that. And I mean, if you can't, just there's gonna be Ken Lavica. You can watch him on 106.2 ESPN. Make sure you listen. Make sure you watch. You're just gonna see FAU basketball Donkey Kong smash Loyola Chicago.
I'm gonna go with a more modest scoreline as these beginning games of the season. You're finding what your team is, even though FAU knows the personnel that we have returning. It's the same personnel, but rarely do you have the same exact identity that you do last year. And with Elijah being at best not 100%, even if he does play, that's certainly a factor as one of the best players from the team last year returning. So I'm going to go with FAU just barely covering, but covering nonetheless. I'm going to go with 70-63, line 6.5, just getting over that line. A little bit of a closer game than probably you'd like, but I don't think it's going to be like FAU. It's a neck and neck game and then pull away. I think it's like a consistent 10-point game throughout the game and then finish around 7 points at the end. But we got 2 games this week for the teams, the basketball team and then the football team on Saturday. So make sure for the football team you show up and support. As again, it's still possible we make that conference championship game. So while there is hope, fill the stadium, enjoy. And also again tonight, like JJ just mentioned, we want everybody watching. The whole world can be watching since there's no other ranked games going on tonight. So big games for both FAU programs. But that is it for us here today. Let us know your score predictions down below of the 2 games. How confident are you with the football team for the remainder of the season? How confident are you with the basketball team game? Their season started underway tonight. While down there in the comments, and before I let you say what you gotta say, JJ, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll close out with whatever message JJ has for us.
Jacob, you're disrespectful. I've lost all my respect to you, and that was just terrible of a prediction. 7 points. I mean, I just can't. No one listened to me. Take the 6.5 on FAU.
That's still taking it. That's still taking it. That's still the over.
It's not going to be close. It's not going to be close. 85-47.
All right.
The next one.
All right. See you guys. Thank you very much again. Like, subscribe, get in the comments. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.